and welcome to our last panel of day one of the LMF Life Skills Summit. We saved, kind of this topic for the end because it's the entry point for our for tomorrow's panel, which is all about the future of work. And this one, freelancing and future of work, we're gonna talk all side hustles, all entrepreneurship, all self-employment. And we are very excited for you to join us. So please connect, share your thoughts and questions, and get ready to get advice from our incredible guest speakers. Just a quick reminder, LMF Network is on a mission to level up the confidence and careers of women and professionals globally. Our goal is to build the confidence and careers of 25,000 people by 2025, which is an ambitious goal. But with your help, I'm sure we'll be able to do it. That is why we are hosting this summit to introduce our new platform, which just launched today, which is filled with masterclasses, mentoring, valuable resources, and community forums to level up your career. And by joining this panel, we would like to offer you a free trial for the platform. So make sure to sign up using the link that the team is going to be sharing in the comments. And without further ado, let's get started with our freelancing and the future of work panel. So to make the discussion more valuable and kind of go into the topic, we will do a combined introduction with the first question. So please do a brief introduction when you answer this question, which is, freelancing is shaping the future of work. Around 31% of the total workforce in the world are freelancers, and we can only expect this number to grow up more, especially after the pandemic. And I do think that this percentage is just going to go higher. Why do you think that more and more professionals are turning to entrepreneurship versus a traditional career path? And I would like to start with you, Olivia.
Cool. Hi. So I'm Olivia. I founded Living Lavish Social in 2020, which is a social media agency to help people get results through Instagram. I think freelancing comes with a lot of benefits that traditional work doesn't really have. One of those is being mainly flexibility. I feel like with a freelancing career, if you don't want to work 8 hours, you don't have to. So you have a lot of sort of flexibility in that respect. And one of the biggest ones, I think, as well, is uncapped earning and income potential. So I think the statistic is most employers give their employees about 3% each year the pay rise. And with freelancing, I know that's a lot higher. When I compare my salary last year to what it is now, it's a lot higher than 3%. So I definitely think that's one of the reasons why people, sort of go towards the freelancing route. And then COVID-19 as well, I feel like freelancing has become really, really popular. People sort of realizing that the importance of having a life outside of a career. Freelancing, offers that opportunity of flexibility. So I'd sort of say they are the kind of reasons, really.
I mean, yeah, you touch like really great point, and I think it also has to do with the pandemic. Is like this flexibility, right? We have kind of, the pandemic has shifted all this mindset of structured work offices, structured work, to actually feel fulfilled in your career, or feel that that's the only career option, which, for example, and one of the first panels that we had today was like, a career defines you. And I think all these like shifting paradigms are helping us get ourselves free from this idea that the only successful career is the one that you just climb that proverbial corporate ladder. So and I think flexibility has a lot to do with it. Albert, I would like to go with you. Quick introduction, and then why are we doing this shift?
Yeah, so my name's Albert. I'm the CEO of Underpin, which is a platform that helps people build successful freelance businesses around their skills, turning their passion into business. We've helped 50,000 people build businesses through our freelance business accelerator, and we've helped a lot more through our software. We also partnered with universities across the UK and started to partner with universities across the US to teach professional education at university level. And we're working on partnerships with the British government to get to further education institutions as well, so that we can start teaching people the skills they need to build successful careers and businesses much early on, as well as providing the tools to actually do it. I'm also the chair of the Association for the Future of Work, which is a membership organization with over $150 billion worth of companies, as well as MPs and journalists and think tanks and key thinkers in the space of the future of work to help try and shape evidence-based recommendations for policymakers, educators, and infrastructural builders in the future of workspace. With all that context, I don't believe the future of work is freelancing, and I actually don't believe that freelancing is shaping the future of work. I think that people and businesses are shaping the future of work, and that freelancing is the vehicle that is currently being used to identify with flexibility and hybridization and blended workforces and braided workforces, or whatever you want to call it. And I think that for the purpose of this conversation, and particularly in support of LMF and the stuff that you guys are doing, I think that one of the things that's like the most cool about this whole sector is the opportunity to create diversity, access, and prosperity among people that otherwise might not have access to it. Like, I have grown up a well-spoken white man with a relatively privileged background. My ability to build a startup was much higher than most other people's. And one of the things that's really cool about freelancing is it's a work-first format of hiring. It offers the ability to build networks, confidence, community, access, professionalization around the skills that you have rather than the people you have access to. And that's incredibly cool. So I'm incredibly passionate about using this system of work, whether it be called freelancing or something else in the future, to unlock the capacity that diversity allows for the increase in efficiency in the economy as a whole.
I just love like how, you challenge that. Like, it's not freelancing, it's just like a new way of working. And you're completely right. I think basically what we're saying is just like a shift in the workforce and how corporations and teams even work together. For example, like LMF teams is across the world. Like, I'm based in Mexico City. We have colleagues in Greece. We have colleagues in Pakistan. So we are a global workforce that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to follow these kind of like traditional structures at work. And still, it's how corporations are going to be moving. Which brings me to Eleonora. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because I know you have a working in a corporation, but also you have your own kind of side hustle.
So nice. Hi everyone. I'm Eleonora, but you can say Eleanor. That's fine. I'm Italian. So I'm working in a European Union project that help women and especially young entrepreneurs to have like a startup that have SDGs in the urban development, so the Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations. And I'm working remotely in Greece as a consultant, and also help LMF with the masterclasses that you can see in the new platform. After saying this, I kind of agree with Albert to say, I don't know if it's actually the future. When I finished high school, for me, there was like the choice, going to university or going to work. And I didn't want to go to work because the dream at that point was finding a lifetime job with the same income forever. And for me, it was like a nightmare. But I was like the only one, because for everyone around me was like the dream. So I say, okay, so let's go to university. And was actually lucky that at the end of the university, there was COVID. That was a tragedy, but in the tragedy, we always find a new opportunity. And so there was now a lot of opportunity to work remotely. I find myself more comfortable with this kind of work. So not everyone is comfortable with this, because there's a lot of stress that can come to be remote. You have to manage your own time, your money, you have to manage your own task to when you want to work. So it is complicated, but depends from the personality. For me, is a dream, because I could never have like a 9-to-5 job. So it depends also from the person. So I don't know if it's the future, but I know from people that some people, especially young generation, might feel more comfortable with this because there is flexibility, as Olivia was saying. So there is definitely, I find like really lovely. I really feel myself happy with this life.
And yeah, I mean, you touch like a great point of, kind of how do you know which path is for you, right? And I think it also has a lot to do with education and how we have been taught. Which brings me a question for you, Albert, as chair of the Association for the Future of Work. You have mentioned that the education system is not doing enough to tap into young people's entrepreneurial spirit. What are the main skills that schools and universities should be teaching to unlock this potential? And how can we enable more young people into these kind of like new ways of working?
So I think the first point that's thank you for the question. I think it's really interesting. I think the first point that's really important is I actually think the word entrepreneurialism and entrepreneur is kind of damaging and exclusionary. Mostly because at educational level, most people don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs. Like the whole point of an entrepreneur historically has been like an innovator and game changer. And most people don't want to be that and don't identify with that. So what we've seen in like higher education institutions particularly is like this massive impetus and investment in entrepreneurialism over the last 5 to 10 years has led to a very small number of highly engaged students having access to building startups and businesses via these various accelerators and support systems. So point one is like, I actually think if you talk about it as entrepreneurialism, it sounds scary and inaccessible and about like really changing who you are and the world around you. Actually, it's much more basic than that. It's about offering people a set of skills, or even simpler, a framework with which to contextualize their academic and experiential skills with the commercial world. Like that's it. When you go to interview for a job, rather than saying, hey, I'm really good at history, being like, hey, I'm really good at articulating problem solutions within the context of complex narratives that involve multiple people. And that'll be helpful in political journalism because I understand how to navigate between those themes, right? It's about how to create commercial propositions which show how you can solve a problem for somebody. So if we take it at a really, really basic level, there are 6 things that are required to build a successful business. A commercial proposition. Without that, you have nothing. A pitch. A target client. Oh, fuck, this camera keeps zooming in when I make that hand gesture. A target customer, a plan to build your network, a pricing plan, and an administrative and accounting plan. Now, if you're not going to do freelancing or a business, you can remove some of those attributes. But if you're going to operate within the world of work successfully, you need to be able to commercially contextualize whatever you're doing. So really simply, from a relatively young age, ideally at least at further education, and currently we're working mostly with higher education because they're much bigger institutions and easier to work with. What we need to be allowing these young people to have access to is, hey, you learn how to do a set of skills. That's really valuable, but it's not inherently valuable. It's valuable within a commercial context. And so Underpin, for example, we provide this accelerator program to now over 150,000 students across the higher education institution system. But more broadly, we should be giving access to these skills to everybody. Like you shouldn't leave education not understanding how your skill set fits within the commercial world. So I think the first part is to step away from entrepreneurialism and look more basically at how can people be successful within the commercial world so they can make enough money to support themselves. And what does it mean to contextualize their skills commercially? And what you do if you give people access to that is you give people access to the ability to build a business around what they enjoy and like and are engaged with in a format that's not terrifying. But what we have is a lot of people who are very clear on what they're passionate about and very unclear on how to find a valuable context where they can get paid for that. And final example, I used to run a media and arts company and an arts charity. And one of the things we did is we worked with disadvantaged like young artists. And what we found was their skills were very commercially valuable, but we'd give them 2 options. One, either we can show you how to commercialize your art, which will be difficult. You'll probably have to make compromises. It'll be a tough road. Or, which is the option almost everyone chose, we can show you how your skills are valuable in the commercial world and you can use that money to support your artwork. And all we were showing them was if you're good at graphic design, then you're good at making templates for pitches. You're good at making timelines for presentations. You're good at making posters, areas where I can show you how to make 100 grand in a few months, but I can't, and I can introduce you to the right people to do that, but I can't show you how to do that inherently with your skills alone. You have to have that commercial context around it. And I think that's really important. And now we're doing lots of work with the government to try and promote these skills, but I'm talking too much, so I'm going to shut up.
No. I mean, you make great points, and I just want to latch on the idea of what we think about entrepreneurs. I think we look at these kind of like huge tech companies that are worth billions, and they have like all this investment, but we kind of sometimes forget that entrepreneurs are just people with an idea that want to.
The problem
make it commercially valuable, right?
The problem with that view is that it's actually damaging to people at university or further education level because these people are like objectively, statistically being excluded from educational programs because they don't identify with the term entrepreneur. So I'd agree with you, like the entrepreneurial mindset, the entrepreneur idea could be applied to a very low level freelancer. But if you look at like the linguistics of how it's actually used and statistically impactful, it's most negatively impactful to the most diverse and most disadvantaged communities who don't identify with the term.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll come back to you about kind of how kind of this like shift supports inclusion, because I think that's like something that definitely, particularly LMF being a diverse community, like it would be incredibly to touch. But I want to also kind of like latch on this idea of like schools and what we've been taught that it's how we should be working. And for example, Olivia, you decided to start your freelancing career after finding it hard to find a job after graduating, right? So what has been your experience so far? Would you change anything now that you have more experience? Just thinking it as a kind of career path for anyone that's listening to us.
Yeah, so my experience of freelancing has genuinely been very positive. I've sort of had a lot of opportunities that I know I probably wouldn't have had if I went into just a full-time career on its own. And I sort of recognise that these opportunities have come from sort of building a personal brand and becoming a freelancer. But at the same time, it hasn't all like been plain sailing like the whole time, and there has been a lot of ups and downs. And I do think that, you know, there's advantages to a freelance career, but there's also advantages to, you know, a traditional way of working. And I think it's just about finding what works for you. I've got friends that are happy in 9-to-5 jobs, you know, they're happy to do that. But then I've got friends that are, you know, are freelancers and they love doing that. And I think, like what Albert said, like it's just about a case of, you know, assessing what's right for you and the skills that you have, and, you know, kind of assessing that. But yeah, I think in terms of anything that I do differently, I'm not really too sure, to be honest. I'm kind of glad that I went down this route. I was sort of really lucky that I went to university and I was put on a placement module where they sort of instilled in us, you know, a career in freelancing. We had guest speakers come in and talk to us about like their experience freelancing. So that was really, really sort of helpful. And I kind of do think if I hadn't have had that module, would I have got into freelancing? So I'm really grateful that I sort of had that background and that kind of, you know, knowledge into that. But yeah, in terms of what I do differently, I'm not really too sure, to be honest. I feel like I'm learning every day with it. It's one of those careers that you literally like you're constantly learning things, and sometimes you can feel like an absolute expert, and then other times you can feel like a beginner all over again. But yeah, I'd say that's it really.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like I'm gonna bring like a question from the public, and before we go to like Eleanor's experience, is that this kind of this new mindset, like let's call it entrepreneurial freelancing, self-employment, how it supports inclusion. Because you, Olivia, you mentioned like a great point of I've had the privilege of going to uni and having a course on this. But and that's something that Albert has already kind of touched, is that not everyone has those kind of same opportunities or those kind of like same spaces to learn all these skills. So how is this going to support inclusion? And also Albert, feel free to bring on some trends that you have found like in another pin. I mean, the mic is open, so like anyone can jump in.
I can go for it if you want. For me, it's not helping inclusion at all. Because to be entrepreneur, when I started, for example, to be a consultant, I wasn't paid for the first 3 months. And I was lucky that I could afford not to get paid for the first 3 months. It's like a privilege. Not everyone can afford that. But when you are an entrepreneur, when you are a consultant, you don't know when you're going to be paid, how much, for how often, if it's a percentage, if it's a project. So it is challenging. And that is not inclusive, especially for people that come from a low-income family. For me, it cannot be inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, you touch a great point. I mean, having that kind of, not everyone has the privilege of having that kind of like financial support network, whether that comes from family, from a partner, or from even kind of like savings that you have. So, I mean, you touched like a really great point. And I don't know, like Albert, Olivia, if anyone wants to jump in on this.
I think that one of the things that people like fundamentally misinterpret when you talk about the opportunity for diversity and inclusion is that this idea that it's like assumed or inherent. And I think one of the things that I see a lot in the movement around freelancing is a massive amount of advantage being taken of young people, particularly, but generally people more broadly, because it's an opportunity to go, hey, you've got to build your portfolio, a bunch of other fallacious ideas that make no sense, right? And what I think is exciting is that there is an opportunity to change the systemic issues in hiring, managing, and processing the way that we work with people. That does not mean that it is necessarily going to happen. And unless there are like proactive parties involved with improving inclusion, diversity, and access, it won't change. But there are two really important facts that like are fundamentally underpin that whole process. One is diversity creates better outputs. That's a fact. Like, it is statistically proven. It is like consistently proven. It is an undeniable fact that the more diverse your inputs, the better your outputs are. And secondly, that freelancing is fundamentally, like, what it epitomizes is the largest change in work, in the workforce in history, which is that a movement, towards value-based pricing rather than time-based pricing. What that means is you are paid for your output, not your input, which for people like Olivia means she can make a lot more money doing the same work she would do for an agency, say, as a full-time employee. But what that means is you're not being hired as an individual person and a relationship. You're being hired for your ability to produce a valuable piece of work. Now, that is what's really exciting about diversity, access, inclusion, because assuming you can equal out the opportunity in terms of education and skills, then you can create platforms and systems to make the network building that you require to build a successful business not reliant on mommy and daddy. And that's what's really exciting. Now, there are loads of problems around us not paying young people, us not paying creatives, us taking advantage of women more so than men. Like, a great example, 4 out of 10 women left education feeling comfortable and confident in a workplace, whereas 8 out of 10 men left education feeling comfortable, confident in a workplace. That's ridiculous. But what we can do is start to look at these problems as we change the system in order to create access and inclusion. But Eleanor is completely right. Like, it doesn't mean that we get it by default. It means we have an opportunity to build systems that are better for it. And I think that's what I'm excited about. And I feel like I have a responsibility to be part of.
Yeah, I mean, you taught, take a great point of, like young people getting like taken advantage of by just like, oh, let's build our, like, your platform. So, this is like an opportunity for you to kind of prove yourself that you've got it. And Olivia, like, I would like for you to jump in, whether that has been your experience, whether you've experienced it personally, or you've heard it from kind of like friends or that are in this kind of like the same journey as you.
Yeah. So I had it quite a lot when I was sort of looking for jobs and applying. I had a lot of companies that would say, like, email back and say, can you do this, this, and this before, and it will really help with our decision. And obviously, when you're really desperate for that experience, when you're really desperate for a job, when you're very deep into your overdraft, you just accept it and you think, you know what, like, if this is going to get me ahead, then I'll do it. But it actually got to the point where, I was getting more and more confidence as a freelancer. I was having more people on LinkedIn, tell me like that I was doing really well, and I was sort of building my confidence. And it got to the point where I was like, you know what, this is very unfair. And I started calling out employers, if they asked for like me to do tasks for free, were a lot of work, I'd sort of speak to them about it. But I do feel that with marketing in general, like, there's just a lot of, I can't really find the word for it, but there's a lot of I just think there's a lot of young people do get taken advantage of in marketing. I do think it's quite unregulated as well. But yeah, like, I do agree with those points, definitely. Like, yeah, young people do get taken advantage of, especially graduates, that are desperate, desperate to get some money. So yeah, it's something that definitely does have to change.
Which, like, I mean, it brings me to a question that I had for Eleonora, which is like, why are people afraid or uncertain sometimes about like going into freelancing, self-employment, entrepreneurship? What are the main struggles that you have seen or you've experienced when thinking about this, particularly also from, kind of the organization that you work that are kind of helping women become more entrepreneurial in the sustainable kind of environment?
So when it comes to changing from employee to entrepreneur is a change. So as every change in life, in any situation, life is always scary because we don't know what we're living, we don't know what we're getting into. So there is always like lots of question marks. Plus being an employee like is a 9 to 5 job with yearly income and likely possibility to grow. With freelancing, we don't know yet because everything is confused. Sometimes we have to decide, we have to be like value of ourselves. So we have to decide how much we're going to be paid. So it's confusing. But to answer your question, like what are the main challenges for sure, the money point of view, like we have to manage our own money. And then flexibility is cool, is amazing. I love it, but it's also could be a stress for some people because you have to be flexible in time. I'm comfortable working a week and a holiday, for example, but as long as I have my free time, can be during the week, I don't care. But not everyone is comfortable with this. So you have to be able to manage your time, your money, your space, talking to people. So not everyone is comfortable with that. So there are many challenges. It also depends from, like I say, money from the income point of view, from the where you're coming from. I can talk about the challenges for days because also working remotely, I just, like I say, love it. But some people love to be in the office and have like some kind of relationship with the teammate. So it depends. There are many challenges. But I think this is the main one. So money, be able to manage your time and be okay with working alone and working in team remotely. There can be a lot of challenges with tech issue, coordination issue, communication issue, because then you have to talk to a screen. So you have to understand how to communicate, if it's like weekly meeting or monthly meeting. So it's all the management point of view can be stressful. Once when you have a boss, is the boss telling you what to do is different. So I think those are the main challenges that I faced.
And for example, if we're talking about new ways of working and how to get into this kind of like new mindset, like question for everyone is where do you get those resources? How do you start these kind of like journeys or conversations about like changing the way you think about, for example, like how you think about entrepreneur, like being an entrepreneur. Like it doesn't mean that you have to have thousands of pounds of investment to start, which I think is like one of the damaging things that like comes with this kind of entrepreneurial mindset, is that, oh, you just need like a huge investment to start, when sometimes you just need like a laptop, an idea, and kind of identifying your skills. So what are the resources or what are like the tips that you would give someone to start on this journey?
So we've helped 50,000 people build businesses, right? And like I don't think it's very difficult. Obviously, I'm in a privileged position. I know how to do it, and I've helped loads of people do it. So that's like a different thing. But the really simple like catalyst of change, that the biggest catalyst of change is the mindset movement from I am a professional or a bundle of skills to I am a business. And even if you're going into linear employment and you're being employed by somebody, thinking about yourself as a business is valuable because it understands, again, what I said earlier, that commercial context. There is literally only one thing you need to understand to start that process. I am a business. I'm not a profession. I don't sell skills. I sell a solution to a problem. I do not sell my craft. I use my craft or skills as a toolkit to solve problems for potential customers or clients. And if I want to build something more successful, I need to think about how I do my business, not how I get better at my skills. And like you meet so many people who are like, hey, like I need to build my portfolio before I can start doing something, or I need to go and get better at what I do before I can start doing something. Not true. I did this massive survey of successful freelancers, 10,000 people. We split them into 3 categories. Category number 1 was people just getting started. Category number 2 is what we called the fumble years, which they were fumbling around. 90% of people failed during this period, 3 to 5 years. Category number 3 was the established category. Now, the only defining characteristic of the established category was that they had a successful professional network or a system for building a professional network that they got their work from. All of them built that network based on a proposition that they understood, whether they called it a proposition or not, and a target client that they understood. Now, what was really interesting is that the people in the best, most established category were, on average, worse at their skills than the people in the early stage category. because the people in the early stage category were so focused on delivering high quality work that they weren't focused on how does that make sense for the person that I'm selling it to. So if the only thing you need to start thinking about is that, and if you want to learn the rest of the framework, like our accelerator program takes like a month and a half to do, but or like things like LMS, there are loads of examples of educational resources you can use and tools that you can use. But the simple fact is, if you start thinking about yourself as a business, she's gone. You will do better. She's back. You're on mute.
On mute.
Sorry, I had to excuse myself. I'm recovering from COVID, so I still have the cough from time to time. But I just want to touch, bring something that you mentioned about having a network. And that's something that we also had, like one of the panels was about networking and how networking is your net worth. And in that sense, I kind of want to ask Olivia and Eleonora, it's like, how has platforms such as LinkedIn or Instagram help you kind of get that kind of work and just like get your profile out, or even just getting like a steady maybe kind of like income of work, or just kind of like an influx of work, because I think that's incredibly important, kind of realizing that sometimes the networks that we build, which is can be just a conversation of like with someone that you can partner with to go after a bigger project. It's incredibly important for self-employment or for freelancing or entrepreneur, how to build those kind of businesses. So how has been your experience in that sense with these platforms?
Should I go first? Yeah. So LinkedIn and Instagram were both massively helpful for me. I obviously started documenting my freelance journey and sort of like talking about my experience on Instagram, and then sort of branched out onto LinkedIn. And LinkedIn especially, like the reach you can get from it is absolutely huge. Like the people you connect with, it's just insane. And I think that sort of leads to the importance of really building a personal brand as a freelancer. I know there's a big emphasis on that at the moment, on building a personal brand on LinkedIn, and talking about your journey and focusing on creating a network rather than talking about your services. So yeah, I think LinkedIn is absolutely incredible, and it's one of the things that I sort of recommend to freelancers that are wanting to get into the industry, to sort of focus on building your brand, focus on giving value, because when you sort of give out information, you receive so much back. But yeah, that's one thing that's really sort of helped me with my career, and it's actually how I receive most of my clients is from the content that I put out, the advice I give on my Instagram. So yeah, I think if you're a freelancer starting out, like, it's definitely a good place to start.
Eleonora?
Yeah, if I can add something, is just, of course, social media always was a game changing, especially the last years, after like Facebook, and then there was all these social media that are coming, is extremely impactful way to show yourself and build your personal brand. So you can showcase whatever you want, especially LinkedIn from the job point of view. And it's an amazing opportunity. You can network, but also it's like your CV is there. So you have people, all your work experience and people and connection. So it is really helpful. It's a great way to bring your brand and to showcase your brand and your experiences.
Albert, do you have like thoughts on this, or for example, with the people that
only as far as like LinkedIn can be a massively powerful place to get like inbound leads if you consistently produce good content that is helpful to people, 100%. But I do also think social media is quite a big distraction, particularly for early stage freelancers. And that's not to say that it's not valuable and cannot be the main source of income and business for lots of businesses, but statistically quite a small percentage of them. If you spend, if you look at it statistically speaking, if you put like 10 hours a week into your Instagram and you generate 1,000 new followers a month, of that 1,000 followers, a very good conversion rate would be 0.1% into a client. So that's one client a month from 10 hours a week of work, 40 hours a week a month. If you spend 2 hours a week sending very targeted emails to your ideal clients in the UK, you might get a bad conversion rate of like 1%. And so you're already statistically doing much better and generating much faster growth by doing direct engagement with your ideal types of people and learning through much more direct feedback about what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. So I think like the point that was made about brand building and authority and trust, 100% true. And you can build amazing businesses. And I know lots of people that have purely from their social media. But if you're talking about like, if you want to optimize your business processes to build things as fast, as quickly, and as most effectively, fast and most efficiently as possible, the best way is to directly reach out to people and try and get feedback as quickly as possible. And like, I've worked with lots of people who have gone for our Accelerate program, for example, who have gone from like 10K a month to, 10K a year to like 200K a year in the space of about 6 months, using that as their process. Whereas the chances of you doing that with social media are statistically anomalistic. That is, again, not to say that social media is not powerful, but it's not the most efficient way to learn and grow your business. It's much more effective, particularly LinkedIn, if you've had a successful career, have a lot of really genuine expert knowledge that you can start sharing with a network of people that find it valuable. Then you start to get inbound leads really quickly. But outside of that use case, it's quite a long slog with a statistically low chance of success.
Yeah, with social media also, like think about content creator. They are doing a great impact to push companies and selling product and selling services. So from that point of view, social media also helping a lot, I think. I do agree, but also if you think about for content creator point of view, they're doing a lot. Maybe it's like you say, it's a small percentage and it's not the total, but that is really effective too.
Yeah, I also quickly wanted to jump onto it as well. I think talking from a student and graduate sort of perspective as well, and people that are getting started in the industry, I know so many people that have built their personal brand on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and they've received incredible opportunities. So yeah, I think maybe from that perspective as well, it's like LinkedIn can be really good for graduates and people that are just getting started. But yeah, of course, with businesses as well, there's obviously a lot of things that come into it, not just social media marketing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think it's like social media. It's definitely a tool, but it shouldn't be maybe like the only kind of reason of how you build your business. I mean, like even content creators, I think that, and again, I am not a content creator, so like feel free to kind of push back on that. But even content creators have to find like a way to make money out of their content creation. So I think that it's just very important of like, okay, I have the idea that I want to share like my passion, or this is my idea of a business, but how do you get there? And then you have to think of all these tools. And because we're kind of like it's already 6:40 and I don't want to take more of your time, I just kind of want to close with one last question for all the panelists is, what is your advice for professionals or like students or graduates who are deciding between like formal employment and this future of work or new ways of working? So I'm gonna go with Eleonora first.
I think the main two is be curious, like always be curious and ask questions. There is no one knowledge that is not useful in life. There is no one thing to say, oh, I'm not going to use it. Everything is going to be useful in the end. So always be curious and ask questions. And then be comfortable going out to your comfort zone and challenging yourself.
You make a great point of like getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think, and that was also one of the panels that we had. It's like about failure. We just want to succeed in the first try. That obviously, like the whole thing of going after something new, it's scary because there's a huge possibility that you're gonna fail. But also, like failing is an opportunity to get better and realizing whether like you have to change some things, or like maybe you're in a good track, you just have to keep on trying. I think if you keep if you stop at the first no, that's probably maybe like these new ways of working, it's not for you at this point. Or it just means that you just have to get uncomfortable real quick at getting uncomfortable and failing. So Olivia, what's your top advice for graduates and professionals about which path to choose?
Yeah, I think for graduates and students that are really unsure on whether a career in freelancing is for them, I think don't put so much pressure on yourself. I think if you're looking for part-time jobs and you're really struggling, why not consider just creating content on Instagram, you know, setting up a profile, any experience that you've learned, you know, as a graduate, you know, putting yourself out there, showcasing your expertise. You know, you don't need to start a career in freelancing and, you know, have that as your sole income. If you're in a situation where you can do it and you have a job, why not, you know, devote a couple of hours after work to sort of, you know, building up a portfolio, seeing if it's a career that's, you know, worth exploring, and just, yeah, not putting too much pressure on it, you know, and just exploring, you know, what you're good at, what interests you, what excites you, and just, yeah, not thinking about the money side of it. Just do it because you enjoy it, and just, yeah, go from there, really.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you say like exploring, and I think that's how you found opportunities, or how you find maybe your passion, or that you just need a change, and it's the only way that you can do that is by trying and by exploring. And I think that's one of the beauties of kind of like side hustles, if it's possible, and also, you know, kind of it doesn't put a lot of pressure also on your mental health, on your physical well-being. Is this just like exploring different ways of finding that kind of sense of fulfillment out of your career, whether that's self-employment or whether that's a, you know, like a traditional career path. And we'll like, Albert, we're going to finish with you. What's your top advice for graduates, professionals, or even just like students that are trying to decide what they want out of their futures?
I think the key is like, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about making the choice. And I just think there are two stages. One, find out what your proposition is. What do you do? What problem do you solve? Who do you solve it for? How do you solve it? And why are you the person to solve it? And then fail fast. Go and mess it up as many times as possible, as quickly as possible, because that's the only way you learn. Make sure you've done stage one, because if you don't have something to test and change, failure just feels like a waste of time. But if you have something to test and change, then you learn every time you get a no. You learn every time it doesn't work. So create that proposition and then go and test it, find out it's wrong, and change it based on your feedback. And you'd be amazed at how quickly you can find the route for you, whether that's full-time or freelance or a business owner or whatever it ends up being.
No, I mean, that's great advice. And you mentioned something about you don't have to decide. And that's also like one of the conversations that we had earlier, is that you, like, careers are not linear. Careers don't have like an end and a beginning. You can change careers at any point. You can decide you like to go, I don't know, into freelancing, and then decided that you actually want to go to corporate, and like that I think that's the beauty of the new future of work, of the what the pandemic has brought, is that it has allowed us to expand how we think about work and how we think about our careers and how we think about what makes us feel fulfilled. So I just want to thank you, everyone, for your time. I'm gonna like end with these final thoughts. Thank you so much for all these kind of like valuable advice and insights. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Eleonora. And with these final thoughts, we end up our panel in our first day of our first ever Life Skills Summit. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We've had amazing conversations around motherhood, career paths, networking, salary negotiations, failure, which is something that we have to get very comfortable with, diversity and inclusion, microaggressions, mental health, and burnout. And this panel was the opening for tomorrow's panel, which is all about the future of work, where we'll explore more about all things entrepreneurship, side hustles, freelancing, and just building a business out of a passion. And don't forget to sign up for your free trial for the LMF e-learning platform to build your career and confidence. See you tomorrow, and thanks again for all your time.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.